Spoken around the world in over 30 countries. He currently teaches at his Hall in London and studied in Iran for several years, graduated in 1998. We're fortunate to be here with him tonight, and I invite him now to come and discuss the events of Ashura and everything thereafter. Maulana.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة على أهلها. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, praise be to Allah who deserves it, and salutations be upon the Holy Prophet Muhammad and his holy progeny who deserve it the most. Just as I was sitting here, I was making some notes, and I'm not going to go through the 20 pages that I've tried to write. Before I begin, I would like to apologize from all of the people here that my English is not as good as the people who have spoken before me. But I'll try and speak for the greatest personality that has changed my life and the life of many of the people around the world. There are many people who just changed back to Islam when they had left Islam because of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Especially in the subcontinent of India and Pakistan, especially in many of the Arabian countries, where people had become communists because of probably people like myself who did not deliver their message. However, whenever they found out about Imam Hussain alayhi salam, they came back to Islam because they saw a personality like Hussain ibn Ali serving at the highest level in the history of Islam. Before I mention things and events that took place on Ashura on the 10th of Muharram in Karbala, I would like to give a little background to Imam Hussain alayhi salam himself and to Yazid and then Karbala itself. We have seen in the Holy Quran where it says that Man qatala nafsan bighayri nafsin aw fasadin fil ard faka'annama qatala an-nasa jami'an. Whoever kills another person without a reason has killed the whole humanity. That is the message of the Holy Quran. And on the other hand, the Quran says whoever saves one life has saved the whole of the humanity. No matter what Yazid was, if he has killed even one person innocently, and I would like to request all of you to think, even when going back, not into the infallibility of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, but at least in the innocence of this person who was a grandson of the Holy Prophet. Even if we do not believe in his divine message and do not believe that he was a divinely guided leader. Was he not an innocent person in the plains of Karbala? Then Yazid, will he be a person that we would respect or a person that we would curse, who had killed not only one innocent man, but children, even other elderly men who were not there to do jihad, but to only accompany Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Hussain alayhi salam is a personality in Surah Fajr. I will only give quick references that you can note down and check yourself later on. Surah number 89 is a surah that is regarded to be the surah of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And the last verses of that surah were recited today in the beginning of the session. That talks about Imam Hussain. If you want to refer to other surahs, Surah Teen, Wateen wa Zaytoon, the fig. That is another surah that many of our Sunni great scholars have mentioned that this surah is for Imam Hussain alayhi salam. But only two verses that I would like to indicate upon. One in the 3rd chapter, Surah Al-Imran, verse number 61. That is called Ayah Mubahala. And if you want to look into the history of Mubahala, which I do not have the time to go into, then please do refer to the books of commentary on the Holy Quran and the books of history, where the Holy Prophet only took Imam Ali, his daughter Fatima, and his two grandsons Hassan and Hussein to oppose all of the Christian world, to show that these five can equal the mankind, the humanity, the biggest religion in that time and today. These five people can equal everyone. They can represent all the Muslims. let alone the companions, even the other household members of the Holy Prophet. No one equals and is parallel to these five personalities. The household of the Holy Prophet. Please look into the incident. The last verse that I would like to indicate upon, Surah Safat, the surah that has come straight after Surah Yasin, surah number 37. I would request that you read the history and the story about Abraham, who had been asked by Allah had been ordered in his dream to slaughter his son, Ishmael, which has been mentioned in Torah, in the Bible, and in the Holy Quran in a number of surahs, not once, not twice, but a number of places. Surah Hijr mentions it, surah number 15, other surahs mention it. But more importantly, in Surah Safat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we stop Abraham from slaughtering his son, and we replace it by a great sacrifice to be coming in the future. Look at all the historians and the people who have written commentaries on the Holy Quran. They all mention that this person who replaced the sacrifice of Ismail is Hussein ibn Ali. And only want to mention the famous poet of Pakistan, Allama Iqbal, who died in 1938. He says in Farsi, Allah Allah, ba bismillah pida, ma'na idil adim ahmad hisar. He says that what a great father and what a great son Allah has made in this world. Father who was a dot beneath the bar of Bismillah, that is Ali, and the son who sacrificed everything to save Islam. And the meaning of Rizvi Adim, the great sacrifice, that is Imam Hussain alayhi salam, the one that even Quran talks about very highly of. Look into the verses that talk about Imam Hussain. For God's sake, do not forsake him because you have not heard of him. This is Imam Hussain in the Holy Quran, and there are many other chapters, but just for the short time that I have. Now look into the hadith and the books of traditions, hadith of the Holy Prophet. The Holy Prophet says, Al-Husayn minni wa ana min al-Husayn. This is in Sahih Bukhari, in the Manaqib, the merits of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Go and check and read the words of the Holy Prophet that he has said about Imam Hussain alayhi salam. No one else you will find that the Holy Prophet talks so highly of. Even Imam Ali, his brother, his cousin, his grandson Hassan, and his daughter Fatima, when he talks about them, he says, Ali minni wa ana minhu, Fatima minni wa ana minhu, Hassan minni wa ana minhu. But in this particular place, wherever the Holy Prophet said, Ali is from me and I am from him. But for Imam Hussain, the Holy Prophet started with Hussain and ended with Hussain. Al-Husayn minni wa ana min al-Husayn. I am from Hussain is from me and I am from Hussain. We can all understand how a grandson can be from a grandfather. Do we not? The grandson, we all understand how a grandson can be from a grandfather. But how can a grandfather be from a grandson? That is the point to be noted. The Holy Prophet says, Hussain is from me and I am from Hussain. Hussain is from me because he is my blood, he is my offspring, he is my grandson. But I am from Hussain because my reality is Islam. I delivered it and Hussain saved it. Because Hussain saved it, that's why I am from Hussain. The Holy Prophet says, remember, oh Allah, he prays after that hadith, oh Allah, be pleased with the man who is pleased with Hussain. And in other words, in another hadith he says, oh Allah, be pleased with the man who Hussain is pleased with. So wherever you want to see who is radiyallahu anhu, who Allah is pleased with, then you should see the history wherever Imam Hussain is pleased with the person, then Allah is pleased with him. Because the Holy Prophet's dua would never be rejected as being promised in the Holy Quran. This is from Sahih Bukhari, the first hadith that I mentioned. And from Sahih Muslim, a reference just for all to remember, Al-Hasan wa Husainu Sayyida Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. Both Hassan and Hussain are the prince and the masters of the youth of heaven. Who will go to the heaven? When asked, Ya Rasulullah, youth of heaven, he said, yes, you will all go in the heaven as young men. Who will be coming to the heaven? The prophets, messengers, Adam, Nuh, Abraham, Jesus, Moses. When all the prophets are there, who will be the prince? Hassan and Hussain alayhi salam. And that's why we call them alayhi salam and not radiyallahu anhu, because they are beyond. If Ismail is alayhi salam, and he is, but if the person replaces sacrifice, the sacrifice he could not give, Hussein did give, then he is also alayhi salam. I cannot go into the great details, but one thing to remember from Sahih Bukhari, the Holy Prophet said, La tusallu alayya salatul batra. The Holy Quran has ordered and commanded all the believers to send their salutations upon the Holy Prophet. I'm trying to rush it, but if you can bear with me. The Holy Prophet says, do not send salutations which are tailless. It was said, Ya Rasulullah, O Messenger of the Prophet, O Messenger of Allah, what does it mean not to send tailless salutations upon you? He said, whenever you mention me and do not mention my progeny. So then how should we send the salutations? You should say, Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad at all times. Because the Holy Prophet does not like being mentioned without his progeny. Because why? Because his enemies used to call him Abtar. You are tailless, your sons have died. Allah said, no, O Messenger, he was hurt. He did not pray against them. Allah said, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Inna a'ataynaka al-kawthar, fasalli li rabbika wanhar, inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. Indeed, we have given you the Kawthar. We have given you a great progeny, a progeny that will last the humanity till the end of this world. Your progeny will remain and will be alive. If a single person is living on the surface of the earth, then your children, your child will be that person that lives till the end of this world. That is the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Fakhruddin Razi's book, Tafsir on the Holy Quran, Tafsir Kabir. His enemies called him Abtar, that's why we should always remember his progeny with him, because the Holy Prophet is not Abtar, tailless, he does not have children who died, he has children who are alive. And one of them is this humble slave that is standing before you all. Not as a proof that I'm as great as Hussein ibn Ali, but as a proof that the Holy Quran's promise is ever living and eternal. I will ask a question and let you answer it in your own time, whenever you have time. We do not believe in the names, but we believe in the characters. There may be people who are named Hussein, but we do not respect them. Not because they are named Hussein, but because of their characters. There may be Saddam Husseins in the world. We do not respect the names. It is the character that matters to the Muslims, not the names. The question that I want to ask you is, if the Holy Prophet was living at the time of the incident of Karbala, would he be celebrating or would he be keeping it as a sort of an event? An event that would hurt the Holy Prophet, an event that he would commemorate and not celebrate. You can answer that in your own time. In the incident of Karbala, as the respected honorable scholar before me had indicated, that the incident is a historical event. A historical event that the Sunnis and the Shias unanimously, in fact, the disbelievers unanimously accept it happened. If you want to read more history about the incident of Karbala, then Tabari has a whole chapter on Karbala. It has been translated, the history of Tabari, Tariq al-Umam wal-Muluk, has been translated into English, and the part that is on Karbala was translated by Ian Howard, Professor Dr. Ian Howard. You may be able to find it probably on the internet. More details on Karbala itself. And Tabari mentions that there were 30,000 soldiers in the army of Yazid, and some 100 soldiers in the army of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I want to mention a point that people have argued in the philosophy. If I'm boring you too much, then just keep smiling at me. That would make me come off early. As I can understand, I can be quite, my English itself being brought up in a country where we do not emphasize on the T's and the R's as much as the Americans do. I try and do emphasize on the T's and the R's. We would not say the T in that title that you would see on the podium, Rutgers, we would say Rutgers. Not mentioning why. The reasons you can find out when you come to London. However, there will be historical events even in our own lives. Things will happen, you will be forgotten, they will be forgotten in the next moment. This is philosophy. They argue, things happen and they're forgotten. You drop something, you pick it up, and you don't even remember it, even the same day. Things happen. But there are things that I remembered for hours, and there are things that I remembered for weeks, and there are things that I remembered for months and years. Just as the American would say, we will not forget, and they do not show what, but they show a picture on the immigration office once you come into the airport. We will never forget the 9/11. They do not write it. They just show the two buildings. That's how important 9/11 is to many people. Remember? Even to us it is. 9/11, we will never forget. Years have gone, years will come. They say we'll never forget. That's how certain historical events are, never forgotten. But there are certain events that will never ever be forgotten. Because of the impact they've had on the history, the impact they've had on the religion, the impact they've had on the personalities, on the mentalities, on the psychology, and the daily attitude of the people towards life. There is one who has changed the attitude of mankind towards life. He thinks life is not worth as much as the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And a very beautiful saying. He says that life with disrespect and dishonor is not acceptable to me. Death with respect and honor is better than the life with disgrace and dishonor. That is Imam Hussain alayhi salam. All the great leaders in the history of Islam and outside Islam will be inspired by Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Why? For many good reasons. We do not believe that Karbala itself is a political event. We believe it is a religious event. It wasn't an event that was wiped out through the history, an event that has made the history. There are very few things that make the history. The history would be rewritten if Karbala did not happen. Religions will be reformed without no belief in God if Karbala did not happen. Remember that these words are not just oratory. Imam Hussain alayhi salam is a man who stood up as a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the whole mankind. Today, if any person follows any religion, it is because of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. If you are respectful to your own religion, it is because a man sacrificed everything he had to make you think, be proud of whatever you are. Do not surrender before evil and oppressors. We, according to our belief, the followers of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, believe that we are supporters of an oppressed person, no matter who he is. He may be a disbeliever. And we are against the oppressed. We are against the zalim, the oppressor. That is the message of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. We are for the oppressed, the mazloom. If you look at Yazid on the other hand, in 3 years of his government, 3 great atrocities he committed. One, Karbala, and that was enough for him to take fire. There are certain sins according to the Holy Quran and the traditions of the Holy Prophet that are enough for you not to come back to Allah. You will not be having the blessing of repentance and tawbah. If you do certain sins, then your hearts are blocked. You will never be able to come back to the Almighty. The Quran mentions many of these verses. I'll only mention one from Surah Baqarah, chapter number 2. The verse says about the Bani Israel, the Israelis, that وَضُرِبَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الذِّلَّةُ وَالْمَسْكَنَةُ وَبَاءُوا بِغَضَبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ. Allah hit them with disgrace and humility, and not living in the houses, threw them out of their country. Why? Because they had bought the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Through doing what? بِأَنَّهُمْ يَكْفُرُونَ بِآيَاتِنَا كَفَرُوا بِآيَاتِنَا. They were denying the signs of Allah. وَبِقَتْلِهِمُ الْأَنْبِيَاءَ. And because they were killing the prophets innocently. That is one of the reasons. Anyone who kills innocent people, prophets, or Imams divine, that just as the prophethood, Imamat is also divinely chosen. It's a divinely belief. It is not something that we have the right to decide for ourselves. It is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anyone who kills the divinely people, their tawbah, their repentance will never be accepted. Yazid did 3 great sins. One of them was the incident of Karbala. Secondly, he attacked Medina after Karbala, which is called Waqi' Harra. Go and look at all the history books. Al-Bidayat wa Nihaya by Ibn Kathir, the famous, greatest Sunni historian, has also mentioned it, that he attacked Medina and he said everything is permissible for my army for next 3 days or a week. And as a result, I'm ashamed of saying this, but as a result of that, 6,000 illegitimate children were born. That was the second atrocity and oppression that Yazid had carried out. Then the third year he attacked Mecca, and the Maulana had actually talked about it, the Imam. So I'll not be touching that. You see, what happens is, you do not become what you become from day one. You slowly progress towards becoming a great sinner. Day one you only disrespect your brother, older brother, then your father, then the Imam, then the Prophet, then the Almighty himself. You think Pharaoh was born Pharaoh? He did not believe in the Almighty, the God. It slowly made him think that he was the God. He objected to the Almighty. So slowly you progress. The most important point to remember, as Maulana also, the Imam had also mentioned, that people in the time of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, their heart against Imam Hussain. There were many people who respected but were fearful of the powers in their time. That is to remember. Most people give up their religion and their faith because of other powers. It should not happen. Or is it happening even today? Is it difficult to speak against oppression? It will be, I promise you. There will be times when we'll find it difficult to speak against oppression. I'm not implying Karbala, but generally. There are many times within our own lives when you do not stand up for justice. You let it happen, the injustice and oppression. On a lower basis, it becomes big. You let it happen in the house, it comes out in the society. You let it happen in the society, it takes up the national level, and then internationally. Imam Hussain was not the outcome of a few people not following Islam, but an outcome of a general consensus of the Muslims who had now gone to sleep and had forgotten the traditions of the Holy Prophet. In 11 Hijrah, the Holy Prophet died. In 61 Hijrah, people are killing Imam Hussain. There are people who were, when the Holy Prophet was performing ablution, wudu, as the water was dropping on the floor, they would take utensils and put it below the arms and the face of the Holy Prophet and take that water as sacred and as tabarruk. It is a blessing because this water has touched the body of the Holy Prophet. The people who were taking that water as blessed and sacred, what had happened in 50 years? Those same people, same Muslims were willing to kill and shed the blood of the Holy Prophet. Wasn't Hussain the blood of the Holy Prophet? Ask yourselves, what had happened in those 50 years? Why did it come to a place where people were willing to kill Imam Hussain alayhi salam? I have lost track of my time, so I'll be finishing within the next 45 minutes. I meant, and that was a slip of a tongue, 4 to 5 minutes. I'll try my best. You see, if you compare the two armies, now enough about Yazid. We've had enough of him, haven't we? Let's talk about Karbala itself. Now remember, Karbala itself is a place where we find historically other prophets have also come. We have found in the history of mankind, there are people who have said, we will fight till the end of our life. Drop of blood in our body. But has it ever happened? Never, I promise you. Go and check the history. There are armies who claim that, and they had a large army, the general still standing, with blood, not only blood, probably other things in his body. Not mentioning what. Strong, but gave up. Why? Because they did not have the courage which was given to them through the belief in the Tawheed and the unity of Allah. Only once in the history of mankind, a man stood up and said, I'll fight till the last drop of blood in my body. And he made sure that he did fight till the last drop of blood in his body. And that was Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Only one person. Go and check and you'll find out. Today mentioning some of the incidents that took place in Karbala. As Maulana also mentioned that there is a difference of opinion in how many people were present in the army of Yazid. Tabari says 30,000. There are Sunni historical books that say 40,000 and some have said 70,000. In fact, I've come across some of the Shia books that say more than 200,000. If you remember the battles fought by Yazid's father, he had brought more than 80,000 people. Yazid had a bigger army, a bigger following, because there was no Ali to face and oppose those Muslims who were fighting in the name of Islam and doing oppression. So this army had been growing bigger. So there must have been at least over 100,000 logically. But I do not have historical facts right in front of me to claim how many people were present from the army of Yazid. However, there are figures, something like 200,000 and probably even more. Nevertheless, let's take the smallest number, 30,000, which Tabari has mentioned. That is the lowest number. I personally do not have a research, but do not claim that this was a correct figure. On the other hand, just like Maulana said, 250 people probably, 72 people, 128. These are the two figures that we find in the Shia book, 72 or 128. Probably not present at the time of the night of Ashura, but later on that joined in. Now, just ending the last, and I promise you, this is the last 10 minutes. Probably even less than 10 minutes. But brothers and sisters, my respected honorable guests, look at the incident of Karbala. We see the extreme of oppression in the plains of Karbala. We see how far the oppression can go. But we haven't seen the extreme of patience. We do not see. Because you see, the enemy could not oppress anymore. He had gone to the limits. He had crossed the limits. He had reached the extreme. I cannot oppress anymore. But we do not see the patience of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. How far can he go? How much more is he willing to sacrifice? That we do not see. Let me mention a number of people. First of all, those people who were coming in the army of Umar ibn Sa'd, and they were coming in groups of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, sometimes even 4,000 and 5,000. People were coming in the army, small armies. People like Shimr had come, people like Thawr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi, who had converted later on and had crossed the line from Umar Sa'd's army, his camp, to Imam Hussein's camp. There were people like that who had changed the camps. But more importantly, there were people who were so elderly that were more than 80 years of age. Thank you. There were people, I've been told that I have a lot longer than I have said. I'm not sure if it is a good thing or a bad thing. Should I take it positively or negatively? I've seen in the past people say, repeat please, like in Urdu and in Farsi and other languages say, Mukarrar, repeat please. So a person was very excited and he went back and repeated it. So the third time they told him to repeat. The fourth time he said, well, if you allow me, I have some new material and I'll give you something new. So an elderly person stood up and said, no, first recite this properly and then you'll be able to go to new material. So I'm not sure if it is a negative sign or a positive sign. However, I'll take it as positively. I'll not tell you why. There are no secrets on this paper. Brothers, Karbala is Imam Hussain al-Islam's place, where Imam Hussain al-Islam is smiling at all times. The surety that he has. Let me give you an incident. On the day of Ashura, even after all of those incidents that took place, he comes back and says, I would like to rest a while. I promise you, if there are that many bodies lying dead in front of your eyes, you will not rest in peace, only if you had surety and certainty in the Almighty Allah. He is so sure that Allah is on his side. He does not care how many enemies he has. 30,000, bring 30 million. But Hussein will still stand up against oppression, no matter how many people are on the other side. Look at Karbala. Firstly, this person who's coming on the 2nd of Muharram called Khur, he brings an army of about 1,000 people. Now the figures will be matching Tabari's. Did I move back? You see, we're used to screaming. I'll not tell you a truth, but not at our families. Surely not at our families, because they scream at us. They have more power in the house. However, at times, whenever we get the microphone, we like to get excited and make sure that we can convey the message across. Sometimes people may not be aware and not be awake, so screaming helps in waking them up. Lastly, Imam Hussain being the strongest person and the strongest man, not physically, but in faith, psychologically, he has the most power. This man who does not care who comes, an army of 1,000 people approaches. Whether this man, Imam Hussain is waiting for this person to come and says to his brother Abbas and says, feed all of these people, give them water. Will we be able to do that with our enemy? Imam Hussain has the strength and the courage to do that. What was missing in Karbala? Have you ever noticed? They had thirst. That is most commonly mentioned. But you see, the army which Khur had made sure to push back was not just from the river, but from the river banks where they had grass. Why? Because the army, in olden days, the horse itself was half a soldier. It would help you to fight. If the horses had no grass, they would be weak. They will not be able to carry you properly to the enemy. So they made sure that not only the people are weak because they don't have water to drink, but also the animals, the horses and the camels do not have enough grass to eat. So they push them back. They push them so far back, so there is no grass, there is no water. And that's why even the animals were making noises, because they were all hungry. When mentioning the sad part of Karbala, many people think, why do we cry when mentioning Karbala? Before I say anything, I'll mention the story from Sahih Tirmidhi or Jami' Tirmidhi, one of the major books of hadith of our Sunni brothers, one of the major 6 books of hadith. In that the Holy Prophet says to his wife, Hazrat Salma radiyallahu anha, that Salma, because she was the wife of the Holy Prophet who loved Imam Hussain the most. Why? Because after Imam Hussain's birth, she had helped Imam Hussain's mother Fatima to nurture Imam Hussain. She said to Hazrat Fatima that you have 2 sons now. I'll help you with 1 son. Because she had helped him bring him up, he was very attached to Hazrat Salma. And this was a wife that Imam Hussain went to before he went to Karbala and said, oh grandmother, I'm leaving for Karbala. She started crying. She said, this sounds, the sound of Karbala does not please me, O grandson. Your grandfather, the Prophet, mentioned that an incident in the plains of Karbala will take place which I do not wish to hear. He said, oh grandmother, I promise you that incident is coming closer. The promise that my grandfather made with you will be made certain very soon. She says in Jami' Tirmidhi that in the plains of Karbala, I was not present, I was in Medina. On the 10th of Muharram, it is a common practice to sleep in the afternoon in the Middle Eastern countries. She says, I was asleep in the afternoon and I saw the Holy Prophet He did not have his turban on his head, and he had some dust in his head. He had some blood in his beard, and he was crying. I said, Ya Rasulullah, O Messenger of Allah, what cries you? What makes you cry? Why are you weeping? He said, Salma, have you forgotten? I told you, my grandson Hussein will be killed in the plains of Karbala. Today, in this Asr, this afternoon, the 10th of Muharram, my grandson Hussein has been killed. She says, I woke up and I found that it was the afternoon. The Holy Prophet had given me some dust from the plains of Karbala in Jami Tirmidhi. He mentions that the Holy Prophet had said, Man ra'ani faqad ra'ani fa inna shaytana la yumathilu bi. Whoever sees me will surely see me in his dream, because the shaitan and Satan is not allowed to come in my shape. So if you see the Holy Prophet, it is a prophet. She says, I picked up that little bottle where I had kept that dust. When I picked it up, there was blood in it, which the Holy Prophet had already indicated upon. That, Salma, when this dust changes into blood, then be sure that my grandson Hussein has been killed. She cried, and she wept over Imam Hussein *s death and his martyrdom. Brothers, I cannot go into the details of every person who was killed in the plains of Karbala. Imam Hussein *s had two sons that he lost, that are mentioned by everyone. One is called Ali Akbar. There is a difference of opinion how old he may have been in the plains of Karbala. There are some people who mention that he was 27, and others who say he was 18. Nevertheless, he was a young person who was very beloved to Imam Hussein. Not because he was his son, but more so because he was very much like the Holy Prophet. His looks, his words, his practices, his whole life was very similar to the life of the Holy Prophet. Whenever the Imam and the household members of the Holy Prophet wanted to remember the Prophet, they would look at this child, this young man called Ali Akbar, who was very handsome. When he was killed in the plains of Karbala, Imam Hussein *, according to the narrators of Maqtal, Abi Makhnaf was a Sunni writer. And look at the different maqatil that you will find from the Sunni brothers who have written Maqtals. Maqtal, it is the name given to the books that are talking about the Karbala. It literally means the place of murder. Where someone is killed, you call that Maqtal. And these words are called Maqtal. All of these books are called Maqtal of Karbala, Maqtal of Imam Hussein *. All of these are called Maqtal of Imam Hussein. You'll find many Sunnis writing. Ali Akbar was a young man. He is killed in front of his father. The Holy Prophet says the biggest trial for a man is when he sees his own son die in front of him. His own child die in front of him. When the hadith says, the Imam al-Islam was asked, what is the best thing in life? He says, when you have a young child who you nurture and grows in front of your eyes, becomes big and stays in front of your eyes, and is very beloved to you, and he also loves you. That is the most enjoying thing in this life, when your children become young in front of you. Then he was asked, what is the most troubling thing? What is the most tragic thing? He said, when the same young person dies in front of your own eyes. When that young person is lost, that is the biggest trial. Brothers, Imam Hussein gave the trial of losing that young man. How did he die? When he was hit by Hasin ibn Umayr, he was hit with a javelin in his chest. As soon as this entered his chest, he could not hold. That's how hard it had hit him in his liver, and he could not hold on. When it dropped, the horse entered the army of the enemy, and he said to his father, Father, everyone in the plains of Karbala, whenever they called Imam Hussein, they said, come and help us, we are dying, except for Ali Akbar, his son. Because he knew my father cannot come to my body. It is difficult for a father to lift the body of a young man, of his own young son. So he said, Father, I see, becoming Shaheed, I see my grandfather the Prophet, and I see my grandfather Ali. They have come to rescue me. Do not come to my body. Father, they are offering me water from the heaven. Father, do not think I'm thirsty anymore. Stay where you are. But the history mentions Hussein *, did not stop. He went forward in the day of Ashura. He went forward. And he called for Ali Akbar. He said, Ali Akbar, call me because I want to see you. before you leave this world. Why did Imam Hussain alayhi salam, in Surah Fajr in the last verses it says, O soul which is certain, which has contentment, complete contentment, he has no doubt, that is Imam Hussain alayhi salam. He wants you to say, oh Allah, even that young man, even Abraham, when he came to his son, he had to tie his eyes to see his son die in front of him. He could not see slaughtering his son. He tied his eyes. But oh Allah, I will come and see my son Ali Akbar without tying my eyes. He came forward. But later on in the day, when his youngest son, the 6-month-old Ali Asghar, and again you will find it in the history books of both the Shia and the Sunni. Why did Imam Hussain take a child? For Itmam Hujjah. He wanted the world to know that I made sure that I took every proof for these enemies to say that you can deliver water to us. Not to me, you can give it to this child. I cannot explain how Karbala had killed Ali Asghar. But I can only mention one part. When after Karbala, there were people asking about how the children had been killed. If only elder people were killed, we would say probably oppression had not reached its peak. But young children, as old as 6 months, there are many people who see young children in the house. There are many of you who have their own children, who have younger brothers and sisters. I beg you to think, a man who brings his own child in front of the whole army, and then asked later by other people from Kufa, why did you kill the children? They said, we did not wish to. But that was a proof for Hussein, and our army would have switched, so we had to kill him. When they killed him, Mukhtar says, was there any time that the army of Yazid ever felt sorry for Imam Hussain alayhi salam? They said, once, only once. When he had that young child in his arms, and he had some blood in his arms, in his hands, on his clothes of that young child. He held him up and was walking back towards the tents to bring him back to his mother. He took 7 steps forward and 7 steps back, and he kept repeating, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ridan bi qada'ihi wa tasliman li amrih. We are from Allah and to Him we return. Oh Allah, I am pleased with what you have for me. I will never complain. But oh Allah, this is the only place where Imam Hussain Islam cried loudly. Some people have mentioned 6 different places where Imam Hussain also cried in the flames of Karbala. One of them is this place. He cries loudly and says, oh Allah, it breaks my heart to see my young son die in front of me. But it gives me patience when I think it is all happening before your eyes. It is happening before you. That is the only incident he remembers. His Shias, his followers, and anyone who weeps over the people who died in Karbala. He says, oh the ones who cry upon me, remember, I wish when you cry, I wish you had seen me how I took my young child in my arms. And I took him to the army, but no one had any mercy on me. I wish you saw the way I was asking for water and the way my young child was crying. You would remember how oppressed I am. Whenever you drink water, remember my thirst. I would have finished here, but this is not the end of Imam Hussain alayhi salam's oppression. This is not what has happened to Imam Hussain. In an event where he has lost everything, he stands up and says, oh Allah, I remember my promise that I had made to my grandfather to save Islam. And how has he saved Islam? If those people today had conquered over Imam Hussain Islam, conquering does not mean to finish off and kill everyone. Conquering means that if their message had lived, Imam Hussain gave blood and made sure that his message lives, and his message is the message of his grandfather. That is what he's making sure. He comes and fights. When he fights, it is difficult to explain how he's fighting after seeing his sons and his brothers, his friends die in front of his eyes. I'm not sure how to explain this. But when he was dropping from the back of his horse, the people have mentioned that his sister, one of his sisters called Zainab, Salamullahi alayha, came out of the tent and called to the people, oh people, this is the grandson of the Holy Prophet. My grandfather used to lift him on his arms and on his shoulders. Do not kill him. And then she addressed Umar Asad. She said, Umar Asad, Why did she address him and not other people? Because he was the most learned scholar in that army. He knew the Imam the best. She said, "Oh, Umar Asad, you are watching and my brother is being killed. Tell this shimmer to come off the chest of my brother." This is Imam Hussain al-Islam on the floor. I'm not going to explain how severely he was killed, how many arrows he had in his chest, and how harshly he was struck by the armors in his head. I'm not going to explain how the swords had struck him, but when it dropped on the floor, he had been hit in his neck and he had been hit from the sides by many different people. When he was dropping, his sister was screaming and saying, "Oh Umar Asad, save my brother. This is the only blood and the grandson, the only grandson of the Holy Prophet that lives." But no one had mercy on Imam Hussain alayhi salam. In fact, there were people who were saying, "Hurry, it is the time for prayer of Asr. Kill him so we can do the prayer at the time of its fadilah." That prayer will not be accepted when you're shedding the blood of the grandson of the Holy Prophet. Who taught you the prayer? Who taught you the prayer? The Prophet. And whose blood are you shedding? The grandson of the Holy Prophet. I would have ended here again, I would say. But no, this is not the end. After the death of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, after the killing of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, they burned the tents and took out all the women as captives. Did not allow them to practice hijab. They took off with the javelins the long chadars with the abaya they were wearing, and said, "You're not allowed to practice hijab because you are sisters, wives and daughters of Hussein, who was a traitor to Yazid." And they were brought to the court of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. They were taken to the different cities. But I would like to end here, but only with one sentence, to let you think and ponder what had happened truly after Karbala. If you travel from Karbala to Damascus, the path that these captives of Karbala had taken, you would find many graves of young children. Many graves. If that grave belongs to a son, a boy, then it says, we don't know the name, but this must have been the son of Hussein. And if it is a girl, it says the daughter of Hussein. Imam Hussein did not have so many sons and daughters. Then why so many children? If you look in the history, everyone who is writing the history has mentioned Halab, which is still itself in Syria, a Christian city. Still, majority of the people in that city are Christians. And that path which Yazid had told his army to take was the country and the towns where not Muslims were living, but non-Muslims, especially Christians and Jews. Because Muslims would stand up against Yazid if they saw what had happened. So he took them through the Christian areas. They have written many times, all the ladies had their arms tied behind their neck. They could not hold on to their children. The children were holding on to the mothers. They had their arms around the necks of their mother. Young children, when they went to sleep while holding their mothers, their arms went loose and they dropped from the backs of the camel. I beg you to think, both sisters and brothers, at a time when a mother sees with her own eyes her young child drop from the back of the camel, and the camels that were coming from behind were stepping on that child and were killing it in front of the eyes of the mother. The mother screamed and cried and said, "Please stop for a moment, my child has dropped. My child has dropped, I cannot go any further." I cannot imagine how it would have been for the people in Karbala and the ladies who had lost their children in that incident. There were times when a child had been dropped, the mothers went, and that child went crying around asking for mother. When asked by the people what had happened, it said, "I am amongst the people who were taken as captives after Karbala. I don't know where I belong and to which town I have lived." These are young children. Many of them didn't know what to say, and they died of hunger and thirst after having been left behind. And once the daughter of Imam Hussein, who Tabari says was only 4, the famous Sunni writer, he says her age was 4, she also dropped. The famous miracle happened that the javelin that carried the head of Imam Hussain al-Islam stuck in the ground and would not move further. He says at that point, the son of Imam Hussein was brought and asked, "Why does your father's head not move forward?" his son Sajjad, or Ali Zainul Abidin, said, Father, tell the world, why does your head not move forward? He said, Sajjad, my daughter has dropped from the back of the camel. Until that will not go any further. I beg you to think, and I'll leave it there. Is it possible for us to forget Karbala? The people who made sure that you get the message of the Holy Prophet? Wherever his son, Imam Hussein's son and his sister saw a few people, they made sure they deliver and convey the message. They said, my brother was not a traitor. He was a grandson of the Holy Prophet. He delivered the message. He has saved Islam. And wherever that head was going, people watched it and saw that the head of Imam Hussein on that sapphire, on that javelin, was reciting Quran, reciting the verses of Surah Kahf, Surah number 18. Because just as the people of the cave are strange to you, that's how I will remain strange. But do not be stranger to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Be close to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imam Hussein does not live in Karbala. He lives in our hearts. Astaghfirullah li wa lakum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.